Good morning and welcome to Words That Matter, a modern-day book club. I'm your host, Lee Smith, and this morning we have a really terrific show, very interesting show, which you're going to see is going to affect the outcome, not the show, but the subject matter of the show is certainly going to affect the outcome of the 2024 election and has already affected not only elections, but the way we live. The author is Scott Walter. Welcome, Scott. The book is Arabella. I've got advance copy here. Very excited to have it. Very excited to read it. Arabella, the dark money network of leftist billionaires secretly transforming America. The author is Scott Walter, and Scott is the president of Capital Research Center, former George W. Bush administration official as well. Scott, thank you so much for being here with us today on Words That Matter. Welcome and congratulations.
Thanks so much. It's great to be with you, Lee.
Thanks. So, Arabella, this is the name of an institution that many of us are surprised to hear, or will be surprised to hear, plays such a large role in our political life. Can you explain what Arabella is?
Sure. Arabella itself, Arabella Advisors, is a for-profit consulting company that created for itself half a dozen nonprofits. And this whole big network takes in billions of dollars every election cycle and is a player in pretty much every single issue in American politics, even though hardly anybody has heard of it.
Yeah. How did they manage to keep that concealed for so long? And then how did you uncover it? How did you find out who they were and what they were up to?
Well, how they concealed it, of course, was easy. Who was going to find it? The mainstream media? I think not. And the fun story, there is a great origin story of this book, which is a Senate Judiciary Committee friend called me up one day and said, this was back in the Brett Kavanaugh Brett Kavanaugh had not even been named as the nominee. We just knew there was going to be a vacancy on the court. Republicans at the time controlled the Senate. So, of course, the left pounced and started attacking the Judiciary Committee and the president and anybody that might be nominated, right? They literally had pre-printed signs for half a dozen or more of the possible nominees. So the person calls me from the Judiciary Committee saying, there's something called demand justice that's all over radio, TV, online, that's attacking all of us. We don't even have a nominee yet. We've never heard of it. What is it? So we discovered that it was a brand new group set up, of course, with George Soros money, and it was going to be attacking every judicial nominee that the administration made. Now, we kept digging, though. Beyond that, we discovered, well, actually, the group doesn't really exist as an independent nonprofit. It is just a fiscally sponsored project of something called the 1630 Fund. Now, there had been a tiny little bit of press coverage of the 1630 Fund because it was already a huge player in American politics as a 501c4 group. That's the sort of politicized nonprofits like League of Conservation Voters or National Rifle Association. But what we kept digging, though, and we discovered, well, wait a minute, 1630 Fund is not something by itself. It is one of a half dozen nonprofits run by this for-profit Arabella Advisors outfit. So that's the origin story.
Wow. How does Arabella, okay, so on the cover of the book, you've got, several notorious figures here. From left to right, Bill Gates. In the center, George Soros. And on the right, Mark Zuckerberg. How does it work? How does it take how does Arabella take the money of the leftist billionaire class and use them? I mean, I guess one of the things we're curious to know is what does the network look like and how does it operate? I mean, actual in real sort of graph terms. Do you know what I mean? Like, is it?
Sure.
You have the billionaires on the top, and then people are just taking the money and sort of milking the money into big cans that gets distributed around to the left-wing ecosystem. And forgive me for mixing tons of metaphors here, but yeah, it's just good to get a picture of how it works.
So let's first just look at the organization within Arabella's network. I think the easiest way to grasp it is to think of a pyramid, right? At the apex, you have that Arabella Advisors for profit. In the mid-level of the pyramid, you have the half dozen nonprofits. I call them umbrella nonprofits because they don't go out on their own and do anything. They operate through the base of the pyramid, which is hundreds, more than 500 fake groups like Demand Justice. And as I said, hundreds more. Those are the things that you're going to see in your Facebook ad or paying for state ballot initiative fights, things like that. Okay, so that's the internal structure. Now, the way it works for a billionaire is, or some other mega donor, you walk through the offices of Arabella Advisors and you tell them something like, I want to fight on abortion, or I want to take over North Carolina for the Democrats. They immediately are able to say, okay, look, we are going to pop up for you a matching pair of a C4 nonprofit, like, as I said, League Conservation Voters type thing, and a matching C3, that's a charity, legally speaking, which can't be as involved in politics, but can take money from foundations and donor-advised funds, so comes in handy on the fundraising side. We're going to give you this matched pair. And by the way, you don't have to wait for our lawyers to incorporate that in Delaware and then wait months for the IRS to recognize your new groups. No. These new groups will just be fiscally sponsored projects of our umbrella nonprofits. So by the end of the day, you walk in the morning and the afternoon, you can have websites and new accounting codes at Arabella for this money to then go do whatever particular project you like.
Okay, can I just ask one question here? Fascinating, by the way. This is a fascinating picture. When you say Arabella is for profit, that means that they're say I'm a prominent leftist billionaire, and I walk in and I say, as you said, I want to take over North Carolina for the left. I want kids wearing Mao jackets in schools or Mao caps in schools. So what can you do? So that's the for-profit end. Arabella's billing me when I walk in the door and saying, here's what I want. That's the for-profit part.
Not quite. And again, I apologize. As you say, it's a Byzantine, not simple thing.
Right.
So let's finish our story, right?
Okay.
You're the rich guy or the foundation.
Okay.
You've walked through the door and they're going to set up your little matching pair of C3, C4. And here's the way it's going to work. You are going to write checks to one of those half dozen umbrella nonprofits. For the C3, you'll probably write it to something called the New Venture Fund, right? That's what your check will be. And it'll say for North Carolina Project on the memo line, right? And then for the C4 side, you probably write it to the 1630 fund that Demand Justice was created under. And you write a check to them. And on the memo line, you'll say, North Carolina Project. Then what happens, legally speaking, is those two nonprofits start doing the work that you want, and they use Arabella to manage themselves and run themselves, which is to say, Arabella, the for-profit, bills those two nonprofits that got your money. And then when I come out and tell exactly what's going on in, say, the Wall Street Journal, the Wall Street Journal gets a letter to the editor from Arabella going, oh, no. We're just a simple little tiny boring back office thing. And the clients are in control. The New Venture Fund's in control. The 1630 Fund's in control. We just, hire the janitors and, maybe run the payroll or something. That's all.
Is this, I imagine it's relatively legal, or is it? What sort of, what sort of issues does it raise, though?
The general outline that I described to you is itself legal in principle. Now, there is a continuing lawsuit that is going to be very exciting. It's all lawsuits take forever to wind through our courts, but there's a fascinating lawsuit. A black woman who's a former employee of Arabella, of part of the network, its network world. She has a lawsuit going against multiple parts of the Arabella world, and a judge just got it over the first big hump, which is, Arabella's lawyers trying to have the whole thing dismissed out of hand. So now we're going to be in discovery phase. But the documents that have already come out in that lawsuit show that in this case, it would seem that they had one of their C3 groups actually overseeing and running a C4 group. That's not very kosher, because C3s can't be as political as the C4s.
Okay. Will this case be helpful in unveiling more and more of what Arabella does? Or do you think that this is really capable of stopping Arabella in its tracks?
Oh, I wouldn't get my hopes up that high, just because they have billions, right? But people with billions of dollars in inertia are not stopped easily. It might, however, lessen the kinds of abuses that we see.
How did it start? Who put this idea together? I mean, it seems unique. I mean, there's nothing else like this. So who came up with this idea?
There are a couple of other places that have something similar to this. In one case, there's a conservative network of nonprofits, not nearly as rich as Arabella, or as around for as long, but they've read our work on how this is, on that arrangement I explained, and they said, well, gosh, that makes things a lot easier, so we're going to set up that way. But it started in 2005. It was started by a trust fund baby, you could say, started by a 20-something kid whose parents had a big auto parts company, and they sold it for, I believe it was around $750 million. So he's beginning to get into philanthropy that way, and ends up making it a career. Now, the thing to understand, you always have to understand people's religion. And in this case, the religion was environmentalism. And when he was an undergraduate, he was radicalized by this environmental guru. Now, the guru was not some fringe, obscure character. This is a guy who had run the Sierra Club for years. In fact, had so radicalized that it lost its tax-exempt status.
Wow.
And he'd started other enviro groups like Friends of the Earth, Earth Island Institute, and League of Conservation Voters, which to this day still puts a lot of money into the Arabella world. So you could say the founder, Eric Kessler, had this come to Gaia moment as an undergraduate. He was so enraptured by this enviro guru that he hitchhiked from Colorado to San Francisco to work for him, right? And the thing about the guru, though, is these environmentalists can be just wacko, right? This guy, when he was at Friends of the Earth, put out a big fat book in the mid-'70s. And Lee, you're old enough to remember what the environmental apocalypse of the 70s was going to be, right?
Yeah.
Population bombs going to explode. We're all going to die in famine, right? So the first chapter in this book is about population, and it raises some fascinating ideas, like maybe the government should make it illegal to have children unless the government gives you a license. Oh, wait, maybe that's not enough. Maybe the government should force everybody childbearing age to take contraceptives, and then if you get your license, they'll give you the antidote so you can have a child. Now, that's bananas, but that is the guy who radicalized this young trust fund kid who starts this giant network.
Is Eric Kessler still around? Is he still running Arabella?
He no longer is he used to be on the boards of almost all those half dozen umbrella nonprofits. He's now sort of semi-retired, and the final ownership is complicated, right? Because there's like holding companies, and so who can be quite certain. He's not gone, but he's not as day-to-day involved with the operations.
I have to credit you again, Scott. You heard me laugh, but a come to Gaia moment. That's pretty good. I don't know if you've used that elsewhere. If you just broke it out here first, that was pretty great. Scott Wolter, author of Arabella, the dark money network of leftist billionaires secretly transforming America. We're going to take a quick break. If you're watching on YouTube, we're cutting away to Epoch TV exclusively. Make sure you make the jump with us, because in the second half, I want to ask Scott, we're going to lead off right with this. How is Arabella shaping the environment for the 2024 election? So something for all of us to be looking out for. And that's what we're going to be speaking with Scott about when we come back in less than a minute. So make sure you make the jump with us and come back to Words That Matter, a Modern Day Book Club.
Today's recession playbook basically has two big pieces to it. One of them is government spending. So you're going to ramp up government spending to prime the pump on the economy is the logic. And the other one is that you have to lower interest rates. So the Fed brings interest rates as close as possible to zero. So the idea is that companies are going to borrow a lot of money, they're going to invest, and then we're going to get the economy growing again. And what they did in the 1920 depression was kind of by accident the exact opposite. So they cut government spending and they raised interest rates. You know, within 1 year, we went from something that was much worse than the Depression to soaring economy. That then ushered in the roaring 20s. Okay, they had budget surpluses all through the 1920s. It was just astounding.